Can I get a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here. All right. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, but we added an attachment to item 16A1, the superintendent's contract.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Can I get an approval of the minutes, board meeting minutes for June 3rd?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. I was not present.
Thank you. We have nothing to report out of closed session. All right, moving on to number 13, consent agenda items. If there's no questions or changes
I
to the
can
consent.
go back up to 11A communications.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, communications. Board report, 11A.
All right. Kind of quiet, actually, since the last board meeting, although I was able to attend Pacifica Pride back on June 7th. Really had the parade down Palmetto as well as a big fair. So that was exciting to be able to participate and watch. Also with Director of Communications, Staff Housing, and CTE, Ms. Shreve last week, she and I helped conduct a couple of tours of 705 to a couple of districts that are interested in doing the same thing up in Marin County. So that was good. And then just, we've both, Trustee Tejada and I are on the REACH Coalition board. And yes, we've had a couple of meetings over the past couple of weeks about what to do in San Mateo County with regards to what we're seeing, with ICE in California in particular, and what we might be able to do in San Mateo County. And last night we had a really informative meeting with local elected officials and other nonprofits and organizations in San Mateo County about the resources that are out there, the training that we can do to be able to support our immigrant community. And it was very helpful, a lot of good information. And I think we can certainly continue to share that with our district as well. Ways where we can, ways where we can become ICE verifiers, for example, or to be able to accompany families that are going to their immigration court hearings. So a lot of good information out there. That's all I've got.
Don't really have much to report. I had the pleasure to go to the superintendent's home for a quick, small gathering with the other admins. It was really lovely to hang out with, meet all the other staff members and just be in a more casual environment and just, share and give them my gratitude for all they're doing for the school district. So yeah, thank you for hosting.
I have nothing to report.
I have nothing to report.
I also have nothing to report. We'll move on to 11B, superintendent report. Ms. Tony Presta.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to report. Thank you for mentioning the end of the year gathering. It was really fun, and I really enjoy having all of our administrators over. I want to say happy belated birthday to Rosie Tejada because that's why she wasn't here last time. So belated
you.
birthday. And really, it seems like summer should be slow, yet it isn't. So I feel like we've just been doing a lot of good work, having lots and lots of conversations with the leadership team, planning for next year. And finally, the one thing that I went to this last week that I wanted to mention was Ms. Baca and I went to, Deputy Superintendent Baca and I went to the Leading for Justice Summit at, it was in Berkeley, put on by 21 CSLA. I'm not sure what that stands for, but it's UC Berkeley. And it was really informative. It was it was a day and a half. One of the keynotes was Sean Darling Hammond, and he really focused on the importance of relationship. And we can't do anything without forming positive relationships with our students and our colleagues. He was talking about restorative justice, and he said, you know, you can't restore a relationship that never existed. So that was my big key takeaway from that day. And yeah, so I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. All right, moving on. Are there any board subcommittees to report out? All right. Moving on to 11D, AFT Local 1481. Ed Lopez. How you doing, Ed?
Good evening. Just report that there's, with AFT's been really busy sending out a lot of emails for political action, especially this past weekend. And members of our union will be marching with the CFT at the Pride Parade at the end of the month. So that's that. Not a lot going on, thankfully, but.
Sure.
I want to say that I was at a political rally this last weekend, and there were lots of AFT members there. There were lots of people with signs for AFT, and I'm just thankful that our membership gets so involved in the community, the larger community.
Thank you, Ed. All right, now move on to the consent agenda items. If there are no questions or changes to the consent, may I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, moving on to public comment. Item 14, is there any public comment tonight?
Yes, we do. And these are non-agenda items. So the first speaker is Kimberly Chong. Can come up to the podium. And you have 3 minutes. Because it's non-agendized, we can't respond to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Superintendent. Hello, everyone at Daly City Jefferson School District. My name is Kimberly Chong. I'm a mother of 3 kids, and two of which they are swimmers with Daly City Dolphins. I know Daly City Dolphins are not directly related to the school district, but they are partnering with Daly City to some extent, and a lot of local children and youth go to the swimming club. So I have something that I want to voice my concern, because I try to solve that internally with the Dolphins Club and the board, but I kind of failed in the communication. So I want to bring this up to the district level to kind of raise the concern. So it's kind of echoing. Long story short, I just want to highlight what I want to say in brief. So there's been a lot of issues with so their policies are getting very strict with the families, and they also said something, for example, mandatory fundraising amount, like minimum 350 per family. Actually per kid. So if let's say I have 2 kids, I actually have to fundraise 350 plus 200, so 550 in a year. So it's a mandatory, it's not voluntary, even though they call it donations. So a lot of things like that happened in the past year or so. But very recently, there are a lot of really strict policies, including the coaches no longer allow the swimmers to take any outside swimming classes, except with private lessons with the coaches. So for instance, my kids go to Daly City Park and Rec swimming classes at the Westmore Giamona pool, but the coaches saw my kids and they actually immediately sent out an email saying that, hey, we have a new policy. You cannot take any outside swimming lessons. If we see you doing that, you are banned from our practices. So I actually have, I kept a record of all the emails sent from the club, like the coaches, either the coach or the board. And another thing is the board is supposed to be overseeing the coaches and the whole club. The board should be, is made up of parent representatives. But just like in recent years, what we've seen is the board tends to stand with the coaches instead of listening to the families. So whenever someone brings up an issue, they will dismiss it like really not discussing much, or they just kind of
You have 30
flow away.
seconds.
So that's why I know that technically speaking, maybe that's not a lot the school district can do, but I just want to raise it because it's impacting a lot of children and youth who are in the school district, who are Daly City residents. So I hope that something can be done. I don't know how much, but I really want to see if I can talk to you and see what we can do together. Like maybe not totally resolving, but at least mediating it, or like let them really listen to us and not doing something like monopolizing the swimming classes, for instance. That will hurt because it hurts the equity too. Not all families can afford expensive private lessons. That's why Daly City Park and Rec provides very quality and low-cost classes to the residents. So I sincerely ask you, if there's anything you can help me, I'll be very grateful, because right now I'm really desperate. I really need help, and I don't know who else I can ask for help. I did ask internally, but there's like not much. It's not really going anywhere. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
I have two people on one card. Did you want to come together or separately? Carissa Sun and Mabel Fisher.
Good evening, members of Jefferson High School District, board members, parents, athletes, and fellow stakeholders. My name is Mabel, and this is my sister, Carissa. She's a former DCD coach at the swim club. And today we're representing Elite Swim School, a community committed to not only competitive swimming training, but we also to integrity, fairness, and well-being of every athlete and family involved. DCD and Elite Swim School started our partnership in 2024. Elite Swim School, our goal is to encourage all the potential young swimmer to join the swim team. The board president recently sent an email to all the members forbidding them from seeking any outside help. And it say everyone needs to follow, and then their membership will be determined immediately if they don't. And then they want all the parents to seek help, that want to seek help with their swimmers need to have a meeting with the coach. And then shortly after, they sent an email that their coaches actually provide individual help to the swimmers. And then if they need any private lessons or coaching, they are here to help. And this is not only troubling, but also it feels like for parents are being restricted and coaches are monetizing private lessons, suggesting a nonprofit community swim program is being run as a for-profit business. This is not only unfair, but also unethical. In another instance, a parent that trying to ask the coach if they can go out and seek for lessons, and the coach actually publicly called out a really good swimmer's name and label them as a typical failure case for working with a coach that outside of DCD swim coaches. The board president has been being dishonest about what kind of program they're running within the DCD swim team. And after me and my sister found out what they're doing, we decided to discontinue our partnership with them. And we offer accessible and affordable program for the community. And we're not here to tear anyone down or putting anyone down. We just deeply care about the sports a lot. And then we care about the community that have access to all the resources. And you guys probably know there's very limited swimming pool and swim school allow. I mean, there's option for parents to choose. And if they're trying to monopolize the swim
You have
lesson
30
market
seconds.
and the public swimming pool resources, I mean, they're currently occupying Giamona Pool and they're looking to expand to more swimming pool in the district, like the Jefferson swimming pool, the Oceana swimming pool, and the Terra Nova swimming pool. I know that the district might not have the jurisdictions about this DCD Swim Club, but we just want our voice to be heard, and then we want them to make changes. And then we believe the family should have the freedom to choose where and who their kids wants to be getting coached from without threats and punishment. Thank you for your time and attention for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mabel.
And those are only public comments.
All right. Thank you, Rosie. Okay. We'll be moving on to discussion items. 15A1 for Education Services. Presentation of the 2025 local indicators. Deputy Superintendent of Education, Ms. Karine Baca. Hello.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. This evening, I will be presenting the Jefferson Union High School District 2025 local indicators results. These self-reflections complement the local control and accountability plan and provide valuable insight into how we are progressing on key priorities that help support student success, from basic services and instructional standards to family engagement and school climate. So as part of the California School Dashboard, districts are required to annually self-assess progress in specific local priority areas. These include teacher assignments, access to instructional materials, implementation of state standards, family engagement, school climate, and access to a broad course of study. This evening, I will be presenting on priorities 1, 3, 6, and 7, and Dr. Robinson will be covering priority 2, which focuses on the implementation of academic standards. And I will pause after each of the priority for questions and clarification. So here are the requirements set forth by the California Department of Education. These local indicators must be reviewed in conjunction with the adoption of the local control and accountability plan. The results will also be publicly available through the California dashboard using state-approved self-reflection tools, allowing for transparency and accountability. So priority 1. It covers basic services and conditions. It focuses on making sure our students have access to appropriately credentialed teachers, quality instructional materials, and safe, well-maintained school facilities. The most recent teacher assignment data from the CDE is from the 22-23 school year, and teachers are categorized based on their credentials. So clear means fully credentialed and authorized to teach in their subject. Out of field means the teacher is credentialed but teaching outside of their area of expertise. Intern means that the teacher is currently in a university internship program while earning their credential. Ineffective means the teacher is missing the required credentials or authorization for their assignment. And incomplete means that their credential status is either still being in process or not fully reported. So in JUHSD, we're seeing some progress. 80.8 of our teachers held clear credentials, which is a 1.5 increase from the previous year. The percentage of out-of-field assignments decreased to 5.9%, and intern placements dropped to just 0.7%. These are encouraging trends as we continue investing in teacher development and retention. With instructional materials through the Williams Act, every student must have their own copy of standards-aligned instructional materials in all core subjects. In JUHSD, 100% of students had access to the materials they needed both at school and at home. And finally, with facility conditions, we are required to use the state's facilities inspection tool to assess whether buildings are in good repair. For the 24-25 school year, there were no instances of facilities falling below that standard. This reflects an ongoing commitment to maintaining clean, safe, and functional learning environments for all of our students. Any clarification question?
I'm sorry, could you just clarify ineffective and incomplete again? I didn't catch them.
So ineffective means that the teacher is missing the required credentials or authorization. So for instance, if a teacher doesn't have their EL authorization.
Okay. And incomplete is the same. similar?
Incomplete is the credential status is still being processed, or they don't have, it's not fully reported yet.
Okay.
And these don't include waivers. If we,
The waivers, I would, Ms. Lujan answer that.
So waivers are gonna show up as incomplete because the credential's in progress. So
Okay.
one of the items later this evening
Right.
will be part of that set of data that's incomplete.
okay, thank you.
Now, priority 2, I'm going to call Dr. Robinson to talk about the implementation of state standards.
Good evening. Well, this is echoey. So I get to I have the privilege of filling out this self-reflection tool every year. And it's, I think, like my 5th year. And it's really a time for me to reflect on professional learning, our instructional materials, and like our processes around delivering instruction in some of these key areas. And it is just that, it's a self-reflection tool. Like, I am the calibration of whether or not we received, a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I find myself rating us fairly high in a lot of categories this year. And that's because, truly this work is never done. We're in extremely good places in a lot of these curricular areas. Like this past year, the 9th grade team in all English language arts classes piloted a unit from Common Lit. And we're expanding that out to the other grade levels next year. English language development continues to explore our systematic ELD, which pairs well with constructing meaning curriculum. Math will be presenting to you at some point next school year because they are actually in sort of a pre-pilot, I would call it. They are going to be exploring curriculum to pilot sometime either in spring or in the next school year. And so a committee will be together during fall, and I'm hoping Kristen Ashford can come update you about that. But math is in a really great place. Their scope and sequence work, their common assessments, their collaboration is really solid. So they're actually in a very good place to look at new curriculum that sort of just supports all the hard work that they've been doing. Later this evening, I'll be presenting to you about an adoption for Open Sci-Ed with our chemistry and physics courses. And I'm excited to talk more about that. I'll elaborate during that presentation. And History Social Science a few years back adopted the TCI materials, History Alive. And just this past summer, spent some time revisiting the scope and sequence to kind of make it reflect a lot of the great work that's being done in that department with State Seal of Civic Engagement, ethnic studies, and like really leveraging a lot of their new materials. So nothing, a 5 is done and we're never done. So I'm never going to give us that like high honor necessarily, but it's at a really good place. Just our teachers are doing a lot of work, and this work is truly always evolving, as it should be. And then those are those main areas. And I believe on the next slide, it has just a few more. Are you controlling the screen? Like, I don't know how to, I have control.
You have control. You have the power.
Whoops. I'm still getting used to this new room. Apologies. So this is just, as we know, Ms. Shreve does excellent work with career technical education, health. Lisa Raskin's our lead there and supports the teachers, especially in this new embedding driver's ed into like the Wellness for Success course and all of the things there. We have a great lead, Nikki Touye, that's been working with our PE teachers to really get them up to really state requirements. And they did great professional learning in-house this year, where they invited teachers to Jefferson High School to teach them how to do gymnastics units. And what was the last one? Was it self-defense?
Yes.
Yeah, it was awesome. So really great cross-district collaboration there. Visual and Performing Arts put on their, as you saw out in the hallway a few months back, their district showcase. And world language really made some great headway in kind of getting back to the summative assessment that all of their Spanish teachers and our French teacher and Filipino teacher give. And so, yeah, very similar responses here where, like the work is kind of never done, but we're making really good progress. And we, again, work with some great teachers on the ground in the classrooms, and we have fortunate to have really great teacher leads as well. So that's my section. If there's any questions. I'm just so good at explaining it. Next section.
Yeah, no questions. Just
Thank you.
I mean, it is a wonderful reflection, though, I think, of the presentations we've seen in the work that's been done this past year.
Mhm.
And I at least, look at the way you've kind of self-graded us. It seems those numbers seem appropriate.
Yeah, it's hard for me not to be extra critical, but I was like, you know what? We're doing some good stuff. So
Yeah.
of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So priority 3 focuses on building relationships between school staff and families. So we've made strong progress in building trusting relationships with families by creating welcoming school environments and offering bilingual support during enrollment. Events like back to school nights, wellness fairs, and immigration resource night help families stay connected. We also share updates through newsletters and translated board meetings. However, two-way communication is an area for growth, currently rated a 3. To improve, we're expanding our interpretation tools, offering staff training on inclusive communication, and increasing personal outreach through phone calls, focus groups, and events for families. This part of priority 3 looks at how well we build partnerships for student outcomes. So on the state's self-reflection tool, we rated this area a 3 across all 4 indicators, which means that we're in the early stages of full implementation. We've made progress by listening to students and families through panel surveys and listening sessions. Their input has shaped course offerings, wellness supports, and other programs. Families also engage through events like, again, back to school nights, student showcases, and advisory groups. At the same time, we saw opportunities to improve. Communication about student progress can be more timely and accessible, especially for our non-English speaking families and students and families of students with IEPs. We also want to strengthen engagement in areas like academic support and family advocacy. The third area of priority 3 is about seeking input for decision making. This includes participation in advisory groups and providing input on programs and policies. So JUHSD, we rated this area as a 3 and 2 indicators, supporting staff and families to participate in advisory groups, and 2 in the 2 others, which assesses how well we engage underrepresented families and how often families and staff collaborate in planning and evaluation. So we have a pretty good foundation through our student trustees and active student leadership programs at every site. In addition, most of the input seeking happens through our advisory groups, like the District Advisory Committee, District English Language Advisory Committee, and our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, as well as district-wide surveys. So these structures help bring in a range of perspective. And that is priority 3 on parent involvement and family engagement. Any clarification? All right. Right. Priority 6 looks at school climate through the California Healthy Kids survey, focusing on students' sense of safety and connection to caring adults. So in 23-24, 65% of 11th graders reported feeling connected to a caring adult. This is a 5% increase from the previous year, but only 57% of 9th graders felt the same. This suggests incoming students may need more support in building relationships early on. So to address this, we're strengthening 9th grade onboarding through Link Crew and advisory, expanding mentoring and continuing student focus groups and listening sessions. Our partnership with National Equity Project also helps us examine systems that impact belonging, especially for historically underserved students. This slide highlights student responses to the question, how safe do you feel when you're at school? So among ninth graders, 62% said that they feel safe or very safe at school, a slight 1% decrease from the previous year. In contrast, 66% of 11th graders reported feeling safe, and this reflects a 6% increase. So while the growth among older students is encouraging, the lower sense of safety for ninth graders point to a need for stronger transition supports as they enter high school. To address this, we have expanded our wellness counselor support, social workers, mental health interns, to support students' emotional safety. We're also working on increasing the use of restorative circles and peer mediation to help address conflict and build a sense of stronger trust on campus. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the schools have link crew and peer mentors to assist in this area. Any clarification on priority 6?
No, I just had a quick question though. With regards to the incoming ninth graders and their feeling secure and safe. I mean, when addressing that, I was just curious, like, working, knowing what that incoming, demographic of children is going to be or where they're coming from as far as our local elementary schools. Is there ways to reach out to those schools to work with those kids about educating them on what high school is going to be like when they come in, they know that they have the resources that we're trying to allocate for them and things like that? Just out of curiosity, it's just kind of a pretty vague question, but.
Yes. So right now, some of our high schools, not all, but we can look into making all, invite their families to the high schools and talk about courses and course programming and what to expect. In addition, Ms. Basuino has gone through our partner schools and did presentation even before they were assigned to the schools, just to kind of, talk to them about what to expect when they're in high school. And also during orientation, there's also some presentations as well to support the students, but I know that we can do more outreach and making them feel more welcomed. I know that for our students with IEP, their families actually requested like a specific orientation in addition to, for everyone, they want like a specific one for students with IEP to help them feel like more, acclimated to the school before they start.
May I add to that? Doesn't Link Crew, does that happen before school starts? I know 3 of the schools have a Link Crew now.
So Link Crew happens around during registration orientation time, where they show students what the high school looks like and what to expect.
And that people that the kids volunteer for that though, right? That's something that they're volunteering to do, to take part, not the high school kids, but the incoming kids. How do they find out about Link Crew?
During orientation, so they're
Right.
like broken into different groups.
Yeah.
So isn't
So
it,
what I'm talking about is something.
aren't
prior to
every
that.
kid's, yeah, right. It might not be prior, but I think every kid is involved in Link Crew, right? Not every older kid, but every freshman. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm just speaking from a standpoint of just kids, coming from small elementary schools, coming into a big high school like some of ours. It's kind of
Pretty
scary.
scary.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
So
Is the data from 22-23 or is it from 23-24? Because
It's, I changed, it's 23,
it is 23-24. Is there no data for the Black or African American students, or was it, the cohort was just too small?
The cohort was too small, and because of that, I actually asked our students, all of our students at the end of the school year, and specifically called out this question. So I will have the data from last year's students, because again, our Black African American students, the numbers fluctuate. So I just want to make sure that I capture them. So I did pull out the specific survey and I will share the results at the beginning of the school year.
Okay. And is there data for this broken out by school site? I mean, I'm glad to see it based on their race and ethnicity, but it'd be helpful to see it based on school site as well.
Yes, I can disaggregate that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I also have a feeling that, keep an eye on that Hispanic demographic too, especially with the current climate of what's going on is going to be something to keep an eye on because as things change a little bit here in the upcoming months, especially with kids coming into high school next year, that's going to be another thing that they're going to have to be really concerned about, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry. What is Link Crew?
Link Crew, right now it is going to be a class, but it basically teaches students how to be leaders and supporting younger students. And so they serve as kind of like mentors, like big brothers, big sisters type, and show them around school and build community, do activities, community building activities with the freshman students.
And so those are students that are already within a school district,
They're
welcome into.
Classmen.
And so, is there like a way to capture when these students leave elementary school to actually get a sense of like how safe they were in that elementary school before coming to a school district, to high school, to then determine how safe they feel? I guess what I'm trying to really ascertain is, did they feel safe in school in general, or is it just, do they feel safe within our schools?
A really good question. Right now, I'm not quite sure what type of survey is given at our middle school, but it is something that we can look into because there is some form of survey that they give, but it may be Panorama, it may be, I don't know if it's Healthy Kids Survey. So we can kind of, I don't know if there's like a one-to-one direct correlation, but it is something that we can look into.
Okay. And then what is the effectiveness? So a kid leaves elementary school, they get enrolled to a high school. Are they directly paired with another high school kid to be like a buddy system? Like in college, right? You get like a biggie, or like your big that you report to, right? Like kind of something like, hey, I'm having trouble with this. Can you just show me around? Do they actually get like an assignment like that? Or it's just kind of like, here are the tools, it's available for you?
Right now, I don't know of like a direct partnership, like a big buddy one-on-one. We don't have that just yet, but it's something we can look into.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Priority 7 focuses on ensuring that all students have access to and are enrolled in a broad course of study, including A through G courses, which are required for the University of California and California State University eligibility. So we use the A through G completion rate as a key measure of access because they reflect whether students are completing a rigorous college-aligned course sequence across subject areas. So at the district level, we have seen improvement. So from 44% in 2021 to 54% in 2024. But while the overall trend is positive, the data continues to show significant disparities among student groups. In particular, our students with disabilities, which they had the A through G completion rate of 24%, and our students learning English, which is below the district average at 26%. So these gaps highlight the importance of ensuring that all students can access and succeed in our A through G course. This slide shows the A through G completion rates comparison starting with the class of 2021 up to the class of 2024, disaggregated by race and ethnicity. So while the district's overall A through G rate is 54%, there are clear disparities when we look more closely. So Asian students in 2024 had the highest rate at 75%. Students identifying two or more races were at 64, Filipino students at 58, white students slightly above the district average of 55%, but the rates are much lower for Hispanic Latino students at 42% and African American students at 38%. So these gaps have been persistent year after year and highlights equity issues. So through our LCAP, we are working on strengthening our school counseling support, particularly for our 9th grade students, English learners and students with IEP. We review placement practices to help reduce tracking and increase access to rigorous coursework. We've expanded co-teaching and also universal design for learning so that more students can be successful in an A through G course, and provide more credit recovery and dual enrollment options to help students stay on or return to the A through G track. So this slide highlights the A through G completion rates by school site for the class of 2024. While the district's average is 54%, there are significant differences across schools. So Oceana leads at 78.3, followed by Jefferson at 64.2, then Terra Nova at 55.5, Westmore is at 49.2, and Thornton had 0%. So to help increase the A through G rate, we're continuing our equity review of master schedules, improving counseling support, and expanding credit recovery again, and increased co-taught classes in our A through G courses at each of the site that needs it the most. And that is it.
So well, one, props to Jeff, because 4 years ago, it was 35%, something like that, right?
Yes.
So that's incredible over a 4-year period. And I know a lot of that has to do with the 4x4 block schedule. And so that's really phenomenal work. But what's going on at Westmore?
That we need to look and explore and figure out what is happening. My hope is that it will increase with a 7-period day. So we need to, discuss and do more analysis with our administrators and figure out why students are not meeting the A through G as, high as it should be.
What does the data look like for the class of 25? Since this was the first year of the.
I don't have that information yet,
Okay.
because we still have summer school. So I should be getting that information like early September.
Okay. And then how many homeless kids do we have? I've seen that percentage just sort of jumps all over the place over the past 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a function of just simply the varying nature of the number of homeless kids we have?
About 50 or so.
That we know of.
We know of.
Got it.
There's a lot that don't come forward with that information.
Okay. Oh, microphone. Be good. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments and questions?
And
Okay.
also really with Terra Nova being basically at the average, what's going on there? What's the plan?
I know that this year they're also talking about having a 7-period day for the following school year. So that again, students have more opportunities to take the course during the day instead of like after school or in the summer, where for some students it's, a little more challenging.
Okay. Thank you.
So my only comment, Ms. Baca, is just looking at the numbers purely on percentages, I think sometimes can be a little bit misleading in a way, in the sense that we don't really know how much the numbers actually changed, like per pupil, I guess, for that percentage. And I was just curious if, moving forward, when we see these graphs that you put together for us, which are very helpful, if we could do it by per pupil too, just to kind of see if those percentages are related by the amount of, what amount of people are affecting that percentage. Just because I'm seeing, a big jump in the socioeconomically disadvantaged, is 3%, but how did that contribute, is, for per pupil, and same for the students with disabilities? I mean, because it looks like a correlation between that and then some of the percentages for the HCG rates dropping and just kind of how that all meshes together. But thank you for this, as always.
Thank you.
I think all of us really appreciate all the good data to kind of mull over and try to figure out how we could get better. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Robertson, you as well. Thank you. All right. We are moving on to action items. Let's see, our first action item, let me jump back over here. 16A1. Oh. Oh no, 16A1 is the, yeah.
You're next, but it's okay. You
Yep.
can stand there. You can stand there.
16A1 is the approval of superintendent's employee agreement, and I am the speaker for this, and I'm happy to say I'm the speaker for this. Summary for this is the employment agreement before the board for final action states that Ms. Tony Presta will be employed as a full-time employee of the district as superintendent for a 3-year term. The contract before the board for final action includes that Tony Presta will be employed as a full-time employee for the district and will receive a salary at an annual rate of $279,596. The annual salary shall be payable in installments of 1/12 of the annual salary on the last day of each month for services rendered during that month. Salary shall be increased each year by 2.5%, contingent upon superintendent's receipt of satisfactory evaluation by the board, plus a cost of living adjustment equal to the percentage change in the consumer price index for the prior year for all urban consumers, contingent upon superintendent's receipt of satisfactory evaluation by the board, and up to a maximum increase of 4%. The superintendent shall receive district-paid health, dental, vision, and other fringe benefits for herself and her dependents. The recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent's employment agreement effective July 1st, 2025. And before I motion, I would like to know if anybody would like to comment on this or discussion.
No comment.
All right. Make that easy then. That being said, can I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Can I vote twice? Aye.
Before I move on real quick, I do want to say thank you to Ms. Presta for all her hard work here in the district. And I think this is very well deserved and appreciate it and look forward to working with you some more.
Thank you so much. I feel very lucky to work here with you, with the governance team, as well as our administrative team and all the teachers and staff. So thank you.
For at least 5 more years.
We're locking her in.
Lucky you.
Okay, item 16B1, science update and textbook adoption. Now we have the Honorable Dr. Lori Robinson.
Honor. Okay. Thank you. I'm looking forward to presenting a little bit about this. I'm also nervous because it's a funny story. When you get like those whip questions where people are like, what would you teach if you weren't teached what you were credentialed in, which mine was English. I always would say biology, and I think science is great. It's really entertaining. Not so much for chemistry and physics. They still scare me, even though I had an awesome chemistry teacher. I'm sorry, no offense. They're a great subject. It's just scary. It's math. But that is why I'm actually so excited to share with you a little bit about our adoption and what we're going to be working with, because I mean, it's a cliche, but I wish I had this in high school. I think I would have gained immensely from it. And so let's get into a little bit of what I'm talking about. So, we're making an adoption, and really one of the underlying reasons for this adoption is that many, many years ago, the national science standards changed to the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards. And it required a significant adjustment to the way that we approach science instruction. Most notably, it organizes everything now into an anchoring phenomena. And I'll go over an example of what that could look like. But that's sort of different than the more traditional sort of like conceptual level, textbook sort of teaching that a lot of our teachers were credentialed in, that we received in our education. And so when we were going through all of like looking at different materials and going through professional learning about NGSS and making those shifts, I had a teacher who said, okay, Robinson, like we're with you. We get it. NGSS, we're converts. But where are my resources? This is a huge shift. And I don't have a textbook. I don't have the materials to really support me in this work. And he was right. And partially that wasn't because we were failing as a district. It's that those resources really didn't exist. This happens not infrequently in some of the subject areas that you see. They put out a really great new framework or set of standards, and it takes the publishing companies and the folks that make a lot of materials to support those shifts a while to kind of catch up. It's the typical thing you see is that they'll put out just kind of a shiny new version of an old textbook, and they'll slap, a sticker on the front that says like NGSS aligned, and it's not necessarily like really changed fundamentally inside. And so we were on the hunt to kind of figure this out and to find things that were really going to support teachers in terms of making some of these shifts. And so that helps to give some context as to why this slide is sort of as massive as it is, and why the timeline starts so long ago. So it was in actually my first year, in 2018-19, in this role as Director of Curriculum and Instruction, that I was a part and participated in the adoption for the Living Earth, which is what we used for biology curriculum. And even at that time, even though they were like, okay, rock and roll, we got this, and we're going to start implementing it, the question was there that day, what are we going to do about? And we were specifically looking at chemistry. And so we spent some time looking and requesting from the various publishing companies, including the publishing company that had put out Living Earth, and requested those titles. They were mostly, I say traditional titles because they were textbooks. And in a moment, I'll talk about how that's almost kind of an antiquated notion in this day and age to put out a textbook, a very static thing. And we explored them, and pretty much all of the teachers reported to me that none of these were it. These were that kind of scenario I was talking about, where the sticker in front said NGSS aligned, but the contents inside were quite traditional and quite what we had expected from older frameworks. So we were kind of in a holding pattern with chemistry. I mean, essentially the teachers requested that if they weren't going to be excited about an adoption, was it worth, in investing time and money and all of that into these new materials? And so we put it on a pause, and it was quite easy, I'll admit, to put it on pause when you consider the year in which these conversations were happening. In fact, a lot of things were on pause then in spring of 2020. And so we kind of put them on pause, on hold, throughout a lot of the at-home learning year, and revisited some of those conversations. We requested a few more textbooks, like when we kind of returned in person in like 21, 22. At the same time, although we were still doing it over Zoom, we were trying to revisit our conversation with the physics scope and sequence. And this one's particularly tricky in our district because not every single student takes physics, and so it's not even consistently offered at all of our high schools every single year. Like Terra Nova, because of its size, tends to offer physics like every other year for its students. And so at the time, there were only 2 of our school sites teaching it. And those teachers were really kind of locked in a philosophical battle of the NGSS and exactly what that meant, and more traditional forms of teaching versus like teaching people that we're all stardust, which is when I first learned that. And, it was a great, beautiful conversation, but it didn't, again, lend itself to the most complete resources that we could create for our teachers and give to new teachers who are teaching physics. At the same time, the chemistry conversations continued. In fact, in 22-23, we even had a teacher approach us who said, look, we're consistently reviewing these textbooks for chemistry and none of us are walking away impressed. So I am offering that I can organize and even get started writing our own units. And let's just do sort of an in-house curriculum. And so she had a release period for that year. And we quickly kind of learned in that year that like this was way too big of a job to have. Well, I mean, certainly one person be like sort of responsible for, but even small team of folks. So it kind of that year of experimentation led us to believe, no, we've got to go back to the drawing board to try and find a curriculum that's already articulated. While this is all happening, we have a teacher start at Jefferson teaching physics that said, where's my scope and sequence? And I was like, well, about that, and kind of explained some of this history. And he said, have you explored OpenSciEd? And I had never heard of it. And it is an open source, and we'll talk more about what that means to curriculum that's available nationally. And he basically asked if he could pilot it in his physics class. And I said yes. I checked out all of the materials and I got really excited. And the more that I learned about it, the more I was like, wait a minute, they have stuff for chemistry too. Like, and this is all actually NGSS aligned, and this could be really great. So in 23-24, in the spring of 24, he piloted that in physics. And I was like, what was it like? We were in constant communication about it. And he was like, it's great. This is how I want to teach physics. Like, this is the scope and sequence. And I said, great, we're going to take this pilot then district wide, and we're going to open it up to chemistry. So this last year, we engaged in a pilot of materials from OpenSciEd with physics and chemistry. And that is kind of like taking you through where we've gotten and everything. So I want to now take some time, like all this timeline led us to the pilot of OpenSciEd. So what is OpenSciEd? So OpenSciEd, and that is its full name, not an abbreviation, by the way, but it is, open science education, as I think, but it's really the open in there speaks to the open source materials, which just essentially means that anybody with an email address can go onto their website, and that's just what you need, an email address. And it doesn't even have to be an educator specific email address, and you can download full units. And they have units for very young primary school all the way up to 12, like to physics. But for our, high school materials, they have biology, chemistry, and physics. I think each one at least has 5 units. And it's the full materials. We're talking like handouts, PowerPoint presentations, like lists for supplies for kits in order to do labs and demonstrations, like every little bit, actually every piece that is student facing also is translated into Spanish. And this is all available in these, you download them as Google Drive files. And so that's awesome. It's developed by a team of scientists and educators nationally. That is one of the only kind of like a little bit of a downside to it maybe is that, and you'll see when we talk about phenomena, is that since it's not like local to the Bay Area or to California, a lot of the example phenomena are more like generalized, and so they're more national. But what's nice about that is that they have a very large team of experts. And what I think is the coolest about it is they just finished the physics units last year. So they went like from like first grade to physics, and they went year by year developing these units. And then I was like, well, you're done with physics. What are you going to do now? And they were like, oh, now we go back to first grade and we revise the entire thing, because science changes very quickly. And we really want our units to be as relevant as possible and as accurate as possible. And so this will just keep going on forever. Like, so in another couple years, they'll be back to revising the physics materials. So it's also still live, even though it's like developed and they put it out there, they're still working on it. And 2 of the big guiding principles when you look at OpenSciEd materials is really that they're all about collaboration and they're all about investigation. They believe that science is inherently fun and interesting if we kind of let it be. And so to prove that point, let's take a look at the storyline of a unit. That's how they call kind of their scope and sequence, is looking at the storyline. And you'll see why, because it's all like questions that sort of naturally build on one another and do tell a story. So this is a unit in chemistry. And the unit question, so this is the whole thing, is what causes lightning and why are some places safer than others when it strikes? And this immediately, I was like, this is something that and this is what an anchoring phenomenon really is supposed to do. It's supposed to be something immediately identifiable. We've all seen lightning. We all have wondered questions about it. Maybe we have learned certain things about it over time, but we all have an entry point to that. And it's a question that just kind of naturally promotes that curiosity. So you can also see at the top there how students will engage with the phenomenon, and then it's broken down by lesson. Like this is from lesson 1. And so you can already see that students are going to, interact with the data set. They're going to look at images and videos, and they're even going to do some reading. So this is something that's like promoting literacy as well, because they do short articles. They talk to partners. This beginning lesson, they just watch a bunch of videos of lightning, and they do sort of a notice wonder protocol where they say, like, what are some of the things that we're noticing about watching all these slow motion videos of lightning striking? And what are we starting to wonder? What are the questions that are coming up for us? And then also a whole protocol on what do I already know about lightning? And it doesn't have to be science specific things. This is where Lori, intimidated in her chemistry class, could have actually raised her hand and answered questions, right? I would have been like, oh, my mom tells me that when you see lightning strike, you go 1,000, 2, 1,000, and you count until you hear the thunder. And then how many seconds it took is how many miles away the lightning is. And I have no idea if that's true. It sounds kind of like a fabrication. It sounds like mythology, which my mom was very, mythology oriented, but it helped me when I was little be less scared of the lightning because it was so bright and scary. And I was like, how close is it? Is it going to strike our house? And she was like, no, if you hear it, it's very far away. And so, this is actually one of the gifts that they look at. And so we can watch this again too. It kind of builds. And I was already starting to notice as I was seeing it, like, wow, the whole cloud sort of lights up right before it starts to strike. And then it branches out, but only one beam kind of comes down. And I was starting to already come up with all these questions in my head, like, did it strike anywhere else that I didn't just see? Does it only come down in one charge? How hot is it when it charges? I'm full of questions. You let me ask questions, I'm going to come up with a ton. So natural kind of engagement and curiosity that it promotes with our students. And then I wanted to give you an example, though, of because, science teachers are like, okay, that's cute, Lori, reading and, questions and all of that. But where's the science, right? Where are they learning some of these important concepts and content standards that they have to learn? And that does come. This is from lesson 13, so much later on in the unit. And this question is related, as you can kind of see that whole anchoring question that we had was like, what is lightning and why are some places safer than others when it strikes? This is a question, sub-question that says, why are you supposed to get away from water when there's lightning nearby? And I actually thought I knew the answer to this. I was like, well, water just conducts electricity, duh. That's why you're not supposed to have electronics near the bathtub and all of that, but not so. And this lesson actually breaks into kind of the science. By the way, students in this lesson series, they've done actually similar questions prior to this lesson about metal and why lightning is so attracted to metal, and looked at all the different ionic properties and chemistry behind why it's attracted to metal. They use an ammeter the teacher does a demonstration with distilled water and a light bulb circuit, and then does an ammeter and shows that there's really not much electric activity being conducted through it. And then they actually just take a beaker of salt, and they say, oh, because they look at this example of a bunch of geese that die of being struck by lightning, and they're like, oh, but they were in salt water particularly, so is there something about salt? And they look at salt specifically, and then they do an investigation where they slowly add salt to water and do ammeter readings and see that the more salt that is added, the more electricity is conducted. And that's when and you can see how it's represented there, they start talking about how salt is really sodium and chloride, and that naturally being mixed. I had to look this up myself too. I was teaching myself chemistry with this. And it breaks it down. That breaks that ionic bond, and the water holds those apart, and then they're positive and negative. And when there's positive and negative ions hanging out in the stew, that conducts electricity real well. So also we're kind of salty, as people, and so that's why also we conduct electricity quite well. And it's good for us to get out of, saltwater situations with that. So it's practical, it's naturally embedded and connected to real life. But as you can see, all the science language starts to become a part of this. They're talking about ions and electrons and, elements and all that, positive, negative charges and all the fancy stuff. So that is Open Science. So what the teachers did and engaged in last year is all of them came together at the district office to attend a training, specifically where they went through kind of similar to we did, only they took all day to really break down an entire unit, look at the storyline, look at the phenomenon. This was all about, it was a physics one, so it was all about the blackouts in Texas and looking at like structures of like, you know, weather and what it does to infrastructure and how all of that happened. We asked the teachers after that day to try out at least one of the units between now and the end of the year to be able to report back on their, you know, findings, what they thought. In addition to that, we partnered with a company called Activate Learning that did two things. One, they kind of put the kits of materials for those demonstrations and investigations together for us. And we were able to kind of purchase those kits that went with specific units. So for that lightning one I was just talking about, it might have like an ammeter already there and like a jug of distilled water and like all the different things you would need for that demonstration. And it also had a platform. So like I mentioned before, OpenSciEd, when you download it, it's just folders in a Google Drive. And so there's nothing that students really like log onto and interact with in terms of like an online platform. Activate Learning is a service that actually puts it all together in a platform. So the teachers had access to that during the pilot as well. And then this April, we had an all-day meeting to discuss the pilot and kind of the next step if we were ready to go through with adoption. And it really did take us all day. We tore OpenSciEd apart, just like what was the benefits of this? What was it actually like to use it? What were some of the barriers? And there were every teacher, no matter how they felt about it, because there was a range of more positive to more critical, like had things that they wanted, you know, like it wasn't perfect. There were definitely concerns. There's also concerns because during all this time, like I said, we've been working on this since 1819. Teachers have created a lot of their own internal materials and come together and collaborated with their blue sheet work, with, you know, their site chemistry teachers. And they are somewhat attached to kind of like their way of doing things. And also they brought up that natural problem that I brought up with you is that OpenSciEd is national. And so they wanted to do some phenomenon that was anchored in things that we see here in our backyard in the Bay Area. And so I said, but none of that's a reason really to say no to OpenSciEd, because I've never been a part of any team that's adopted a textbook and then the expectation is that you teach lockstep out of that textbook, that we can really take what we have with OpenSciEd and find a way for that to work in harmony with a lot of the scope and sequence work. So that's really what we were doing that day, was kind of hashing out those conversations and talking about what that would look like. So then the next day I said, well, I don't want to just have this, you know, whole collective conversation be it. I want to hear from each individual teacher. And so I sent a survey to collect individual feedback. And it was 11 teachers, because this is just the chemistry and physics teachers. So it's not every single science teacher in the district. All were okay with moving forward. So the way I did it was like, yes, I'm excited. Yes, I have some reservations, but let's keep going. Yes. Then there was like a third yes that emerged, which was like, yes, I kind of just feel like this is the will of the group and I'm going to come along and hope that I learn. There was one teacher that had to kind of be the response for. That they had still we ended up after even the survey meeting one-on-one and talking about their concerns, and but they ultimately said, yeah, like, no, I can sense that the rest of the district teachers really want to move forward with this particular one. There's a couple teachers who admitted that the fact that this isn't kind of a traditional textbook, they're just used to that, is still kind of like gnawing on them a little bit. That was kind of their reservation. Like, what is this going to look like using this as a textbook when it's not a textbook? But everybody else, a lot of the good majority of the rest of the teachers just are really excited. I think it's pretty cool to have materials like this. It does seem to be the way that a lot of curriculum is going, is less traditional, like textbook static thing, but instead something that's open source that includes all-encompassing kind of resources that can be easily updated. And so they're looking forward to next steps. And speaking of next steps, so what is next? So I mentioned that we used Activate Learning along with OpenSciED to kind of look at those platforms and kits. That was the thing that was pretty much universally trashed. They did not like the kits. I mean, it was one of those things where we had to kind of go through it to figure it out, though, is that the promise of the kits as being better than just ordering the materials on our own was the hope that some of the things would already be assembled, and they weren't. When we opened up the kits from this Activate Learning, we still had to assemble all the things in the kits. And so the teachers were like, well, this was supposed to save us time. Like that's, there's no reason to move forward. And then they were mixed on the platform to actually engage with it. I actually did notice this morning that OpenSciED itself now has a button that instead of just downloading the unit materials into a Google Drive, it does say set up on Google Classroom. So I'm going to play with that because I'm hoping that maybe that could solve some of our issues about the platform, like how the students kind of interact with the interface issues. But other than that, I did tell them we can explore they are not the only company that offers these kind of secondary third-party offerings to make OpenSciED more useful. So we'll continue kind of to look at that. We are spending a good amount of time next year pulling teams of teachers to work on the chemistry and physics updates to the scope and sequence. So the scope and sequence isn't going away. Instead, what is happening is they are going to take OpenSciED and figure out how to, marry, thread, however you want to put it, like those materials in with the scope and sequence work already done. And then finally, and this is kind of funny to me, but we are going to be engaged in a pilot with our biology teachers and OpenSciED next year. They got jealous when they saw the chemistry teachers and the physics teachers, a bunch of, some of our department heads were a part of these conversations, and they're not necessarily chemistry and physics teachers, they're biology teachers. And they started saying, wait, I piloted one of these units because remember the materials you can get for free. And they were like, I really like this. Can we adopt this for biology? And, if you go back to my timeline, it actually has been a good amount of time since we adopted that Living Earth textbook. It was back in 1819. And so I said, absolutely. It would obviously be really great to even have the entire district and biochemistry and physics because they are kind of meant to build on one another. Because one other thing that I forgot to mention as well is a law passed recently. I'm looking over at Ms. Baca because she would probably remember the exact AB, but it's we have to integrate in environmental science into our courses. Do you know the one I'm talking about? 295, but that's what it says essentially, right? Is that all of our courses have to integrate environmental science. OpenSciED already does that. Every single one of the units really looks at environmental science through the lens of chemistry, physics, biology. So it would also fulfill that requirement for us. So yeah, I'm excited for what is to come next and to share a little bit about these materials with you this evening. So with that, I'll pause for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Are there any questions, comments?
Yeah, I'll start. Wow.
A good well.
Yeah. So the price is right.
Well, I know. Yeah. And that's really not something I wasn't trying to cheap out, or be
Right.
like, yeah, go for the cheap thing.
Gone are the days when we'd have a rep from a publishing house trying to sell us on their curriculum in front of us. Right. So I guess, next year then we will start to see more. Is this the plan is this would be the curriculum for next year? I'm just trying to understand exactly how we're integrating.
Because they already did a pilot, they are encouraged to use OpenSciED as much as possible, but it doesn't live in any official document with our scope and sequence as of yet. So I think it's some of the sites, it's going to take those conversations to happen first, and to provide some of that space and time.
So the question before us tonight is to basically approve the usage of this officially as part of our curriculum.
Right.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Really awesome presentation. I love the grounding concept. I think that's a really unique way for a lot of students to understand at a high level. And then when you start asking those really nitty-gritty questions, when it comes down to oh, now the science starts to make sense, which I feel like is literally flipping the script. Before we learned the periodic table, you had to memorize it. It was painful. I will rebuttal though that chemistry was my favorite subject. So we might have a little beef there. However, leading to my question, with the pilot with the teachers, was the survey anonymous?
Oh, no, wait,
Okay.
let me see. No, it was optional to put their name.
Okay.
And that was only because I said that, especially if they had specific concerns,
Yes.
that I really did want to be able to follow up with them. Because I didn't want it to feel like, oh, I didn't want it to feel like a vote, like, oh, you got outvoted, done. Because at the end of the day, something like this really shouldn't be a vote, because the teacher who got outvoted still, if it gets adopted, they still have to use this as a curriculum. And so really trying to keep the dialogue open with those folks that had reservations to say like, hey, I started both conversations with like, I'm not here to sell you, I mean, like, I know it's no cost, but like, I'm not here to sell you on this and try and twist your arm, but like, this does seem to be where your colleagues are at and what they kind of want to move forward with. Like, what can I do or what can we do collectively to try and make you more comfortable with where this is headed? So that was the, double-edged sword of like the anonymity thing.
Got it. And has this been tried with actual students yet? Like this method has been tried? What were their scores before this was piloted among the students?
I wouldn't have enough specificity on that information because we were very flexible about letting them try different units at different times.
Okay.
And then some of the teachers used like one unit, whereas I had a couple of teachers that came and was like, well, after I piloted one unit, I liked it so much that I wanted to do it again. And they ended up like using multiple units. And so I don't know that we would necessarily have a perfect reflection in our CAST scores about that. CAST is tricky too because our students take it in 11th grade and it tests biology, chemistry, and physics. And as I mentioned previously, to graduate with, a JUHSD diploma, you only need biology and chemistry. And so not all the students have taken physics, and yet the CAST tests them in physics. And sometimes it can be really tricky to kind of really trust those test scores in the same way. But that is something that I'm glad you brought up, because when we go into piloting math next year, I actually want to come up with something, even if it's local, to be able to capture exactly what you're saying. And it's something that I'll look into doing for biology as well, so that we have something to show that's tangible like that.
That was going to be my follow-up actually, is like, instead of I'm not an educator, this is you guys' job, but just thinking from a technology perspective, it's called like a MVP, right? Most minimum viable product. So why wouldn't you just pick one subject like chemistry, really put it through the ringer, break it, see that it actually has outcome to students and value add before then we deploy it to the next course, to the next course, the next course. Just curious.
I think that there's a definite logic in that. I think one of the things that I'm weighing in the other direction, though, is that like our departments are really so small. And even though, I mean, like, because of the nature of science credentials, they are credentialed in that specific subject. So it's less, a biology teacher is a biology teacher most of the time, unless they're dual credentialed. But there's still so much like department level collaboration that they're doing, that I think there is really a lot of excitement about the idea of them all being on the same page with like all having open SciEd and all access to those NGSS materials. But yeah, I mean, that's why we are piloting. I mean, there was actually something put forward where they're like, why don't we just adopt for biology as well? And I was like, whoa. We don't have everybody in biology, and we want to make sure they get a chance to explore some of these units, and they are different sciences, even physical science and a life science. And so, but that's good feedback to take into, this adoption. And I hope it's demonstrated by the timeline that we certainly weren't trying to go fast. I think there is some pressure, even a little bit in this conversation, that I feel like at times it's felt that we've gone too slow in some of this. And so that might be why it feels fast now.
And just to clarify, this doesn't replace textbooks. It supplements to it, or this will get rid of the textbooks completely, and then the teachers would just have to depend on this, or that's what the pilot is doing.
Yeah, it would. I mean, like there is currently no other chemistry textbook, so this would be the chemistry textbook. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be supplemental materials that chemistry teacher, I mean, we approve all the time, various texts for it, but there wouldn't be, yeah, like a traditional tome textbook. And that was some of their reservations when I was talking to some of the teachers.
I think I would feel much comfortable with more numbers to see like a I guess test scores, and then you know, a pilot class gets exposed to this content 3 months, 6 months later, you know, maybe the same topic or even the same chapter or same concept, and then how they perform on the test after that. And even better, let's put them against a standardized test that our school district is going to be, you know, judged against to see how they did test in that regard before I would honestly really feel comfortable. Just my 2 cents. That's it. All my questions and comments.
Awesome.
Otherwise, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation as always, and reminding us of the timeline, because I remember when, you know, the Living Earth came out, and the whole thing about NGSS, the conversations, it just seemed so revolutionary at the time. And, you know, we were worried people wouldn't buy into it. But just to see how this organically came about with Open SciEd, and that you were so open to looking into it and actually piloting it is great. So are we not, they didn't like the kits, so are we not using the kits?
Well, I mean, we'll use what's in the kits. I mean, the materials are good in the kits. I think they were just disappointed that it didn't save time. Like that was the big thing. Like there's, I wish Mr. Miller, he was the physics teacher that tried it out, was here. There's something with toilet paper rolls that some kind of like metal is wrapped around, and like it's used for something to conduct something. And he had to like sit there and actually wrap all of the coil around the, and it takes time. It takes a lot of
So
time.
he had to do it, or he had
Yeah.
the students do it?
Well, no, he did it.
He did it.
I
Oh,
think
so
he
that it
said
would
he
be ready
binge
for the
watched a, you know,
students.
season of something on Netflix
Oh,
while he was working
gosh.
on it. So he was like, it wasn't all lost time.
Oh.
But that was actually when I went to Karina. I was like, look, we already in prior models have bought the materials that he's actually working with, and he did it that way. I was hoping that by buying it through this Activate Learning that they would come pre-assembled, because I mean, like time, our teachers' time is very precious, and I would love to have offered something, but you know, the search continues. Like that doesn't mean just because Activate's learning kits didn't exactly fit the bill. There are other organizations and other ways for us to kind of explore some of those things.
Okay, great. And thank you for reminding us of what the CASP test entails, that they're getting tested on physics, but they may not even have taken it. That's rough. Yeah, I wish test scores didn't matter so much, but and then, so are we going to do a scope and sequence for?
Yeah. So there is already a scope and sequence. And then next year, what they're doing is that now that they're kind of like authorized to use Open SciEd, they are mapping Open SciEd into their scope and sequence.
Okay.
Because in some cases, what might happen is that they might like borrow the anchoring phenomena but edit it to make it, if they have something, like if they're looking at like, oh, I'm like, please don't make me think of science things off the top of my head. I'm like acidification or something like that of like oceans. And they want to actually do something like in the Bay Area, like with the San Francisco Bay, or like, pollution in like India Basin, like that area out in San Francisco, that they could do that they could edit it and put in lessons and things that would make it more relevant for our students. And I absolutely want to give our teachers the freedom to be able to do those things and bring their expertise in.
Great. Thank you.
Quick question before going on. Have we heard from the students? Has there been any feedback from the students who have taken
pilot
Not
classes?
captured, like, but anecdotally, they did when that whole day where we had the like knockout drag out day of like, in April, a lot of the teachers brought in their student perspective, and they said that they were complaining initially because Open SciEd gets them to talk so much. There's a lot more talking in Open SciEd because there's like shorter articles, and then like that whole thing about the notice and wonder around the lightning, like, they're brainstorming certain things and they're sharing with partners, or they're doing a lot of their investigations are done in groups, and there's like particular like collaboration targets, because that's the two big things with Open SciEd: investigation, collaboration. So there's collaboration kind of targets along with the investigations that they're doing in those labs and all of that. And so they were like, gosh, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot of talking. And then they complain about reading too. Even though, I mean, when I say
Wait, the students
reading,
complain about the reading or the teachers complain about the
well,
reading?
I
Or
think both, to be
Okay.
really honest with you. I think some of the teachers, that was not their favorite part, but the readings are quite short, but there's a lot of them because they're trying to like show different lenses and perspectives on a particular topic. Like the one that we demoed with the Texas blackouts, it was like looking at multiple news articles from the actual event that happened a few years back, from different publications and from different points in time as the phenomenon was happening. But we're talking very, very short articles, like less than a page. But there's a lot of them, and they're not used to being given a news article and told to talk about it in a science class. And so that was challenging for them at first. But the thing that was really poignant to me is one of the teachers said that the students said that like they got more used to it in the second unit. Like when this particular teacher did a 2-unit pilot, and they said that the students were like, oh, after going through it the first time, they were like, now I see what it's trying to get us to do. And so that was the feedback.
Okay. A lot different than my days. I'm just doing nothing but stoichiometry every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved chemistry. I had a really engaging teacher, but it was the logarithms for me. I still hear that word and I go, ooh, logarithms.
Same.
Yeah, actually, I think the student engagement and talking is exactly what science needs. I think that's the whole point of it. Discovery and discussion and thought process. I mean, that's what science does. That's what scientists do. So, I mean, I think that's really awesome. Fun fact about me, I'm a big science nerd myself. I've always been into science. I still study it as much as I can and try to understand it as much as I can. So I'm going to dip into this myself and check it out. One of the things I was thinking about while you were talking though is, the students have access to this too. Is there a way possibly that they could help pick a lesson for a specific topic that they're learning or something like that? I'm just throwing that out randomly as I was thinking about it. And then the other thing I was thinking about too is how are these lessons vetted? And I just looked it up while you were talking too, and it says they undergo a rigorous process by ed reports and all that stuff. And so that answered that question. And then I was also thinking that part of, with the the evolution of AI coming along and with helping develop, possibly helping develop a curriculum with taking some of that resource from that site and kind of putting it together and trying to figure out some way to use AI to kind of leverage that information a little bit could be a way to put together lessons plans a little more easily. And then you touched on a little bit about one of the things I was thinking about, kind of trying to get some of these some of our teachers or educators to kind of buy in on this is instead of obviously if there's no textbooks, there's not much of an option as far as getting that material, but also it's also good for reinforcing lessons that they're teaching if they have their own lessons from outside of this resource. So all these things, I think this is awesome. I mean, I love it. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's definitely something that, and being open source, obviously, I think you get the best of, everything from around whoever's, is this just this is not just the United States, this is around the world, right? Everybody could dip into this kind of thing, or?
Well, I mean, anybody could. It was developed in the United States and
Right.
mostly, I think, but I think, yeah, I mean, as far as I can see, one only needs a email address to be able to access.
Yeah.
So I don't see what would limit anybody else from being
Well,
able
how
to
cool is
access
that?
it.
Just to be
Yeah.
tapped into all the great minds out there that are just trying to help, teach
Mhm.
science and
Yeah.
and educate. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and
those are
I-
just all my thoughts. They were really random and all that. I don't need any answers, but I'm
No.
I'm kind of stoked about this. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that you brought up ed reports because I did look into that a little bit because we don't really have the same thing at this high school level, but Open SciEd is proud of the fact that their middle school units, at least, so still in kind of a secondary context, them and one other platform are the only ones who received the overall green from
Yeah.
ed reports. Everybody else is at like the orange level. And
Yeah.
so, and that's in terms of its usability and its materials. So
Yeah.
that was exciting. This has also been adopted by a neighboring district. I don't know how many. I know at least South San Francisco adopted Open SciEd
That's cool.
for their science adoption.
Exciting
as well.
stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, having taught science for many years, makes me really, really, really happy that our kids are going to participate in with this curriculum. So I think it looks great. The question that I have though is, and I Googled it kind of quickly, it doesn't look like it's state adopted. I know that oftentimes some of the best materials aren't, frankly, and then you have to like do something. So is it it looks like it wasn't state adopted. Is it on the state adopted list? Do we have to worry about that? Do we have to do anything special?
Yeah, we aren't beholden to the state adoption at the high school level. That's part of the reason why Ed Reports
Not at
doesn't
all.
always report on high school materials.
So it's perfectly okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, to my understanding,
Okay.
I'm always going to look over at Baca. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
no, I
boss, is it
trust you.
okay?
All right. I was looking going, is this adopted? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Yes, they don't have lists for high schools.
Mhm.
It's K-8.
Well, look at me showing my K8-ness. Okay, that's great.
I actually, though, it's something that I'm always like, when I first got into this job, I was like, why not?
I
Like,
know, yeah,
I would
I-
love to just have,
And oftentimes the
something-
best materials, frankly, aren't on the state adopted list. So
Yeah.
wonderful. That was my one
Mhm.
worry. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't see that. Okay, wonderful. It looks really great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, can we entertain a motion to officially adopt these materials for the subject starting in 2025, 2026 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sign.
All right. 16B2, the approval of the 2025 Local Control and Accountability Plan. Deputy Superintendent of Education, Ms. Kareem Baca.
Hello again. So the Jefferson Union High School District's 25-26 LCAP reflects our ongoing commitment to improving student outcomes and closing equity gaps, especially for our English learners, foster youth, students experiencing homelessness, and those from low-income families. This year's plan focuses on few key areas, expanding academic and wellness supports like co-teaching and additional mental health staff, improving instruction through universal design for learning, and align professional development and increasing access to college and career pathways, such as A through G courses, dual enrollment, and CTE programs. We're also deepening our work around family and community engagement by introducing new tools and strategies to better connect with historically underserved students. And with that, I recommend that the board approve the 25-26 Local Control and Accountability Plan.
Any questions?
No, since we've had a deep dive into it for last meeting and back in April.
All right.
So move to approve the 2025 Local Control and Accountability Plan.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Baca. All right, 16C1. Resolution 2024-2025, 24. Resolution authorizing assignment of certificated personnel to teach outside their authorized teaching field. Ms. Dana Lujan.
Good evening, everyone. The item before you this evening would allow a teacher at Jefferson High School who is credentialed in the area of English to teach fine arts, specifically ceramics. This teacher has 42 semester units in the area of fine arts, which is well above the state requirement to allow for a teacher to teach outside their credential area.
Thank you. Motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Lujan. All right,
Thank you.
16.2, a variable term waiver, Gina Wilson, Ms. Lujan again.
Yes, thank you. This variable term waiver would allow a teacher who has teaching experience in the area of mathematics, but it's private school teaching experience, so they don't hold a California credential. This waiver would allow this teacher some time in order to meet the requirements, and we've already mapped out a plan to allow this person to complete their credential requirements and have a full equivalency credential by the end of next school year.
Thank you. Motion to approve Gina Wilson's variable term waiver application for 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, 16D1, budget adoption 2025-2026. Ms. Tita Van Raphorst.
Thank you, President Gallegos. Good evening, everyone. What is before you for adoption is the same budget that was presented at the June 3rd meeting. And as outlined, we will be able to meet our financial obligations for the current year and the subsequent 2 years, including everything that is encompassed in the LCAP.
Thank you, Tina. And as always, thank you to everybody that put all the hard work into this. Motion is to approve. Can I get a motion to approve the budget?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 2 in D, facilities and theater rental rates revisions. Ms. Tina Van Raphorst again.
Thank you. So before you tonight is an update to our facilities rental fees. The last time this was updated was January of 2022. We have since hired a rental coordinator. Miss Jamie Rietti is here in the audience in case we have any questions of her. And what we did was a review of other local rental facilities from school districts. And we noticed that we needed to make a significant increase to be able to cover our costs. But because we want to be mindful of the impact to the community members, we're recommending a 3-year phased implementation. So rates would gradually go up over the next 3 years as presented.
Thank you. Motion for the board to adopt the facilities and theater rental rates as presented.
Just quickly, just a couple of quick questions. With regards to both the Westmore and Terra Nova theaters, have there been decent rentals on those facilities? I mean, have those facilities been rented recently?
They absolutely have. And Ms. Riotti can tell you a little bit more.
Hi.
I don't know if I'm saying your last name right, so please
No,
say
that's
it.
great.
Okay.
You're good. Yeah. There have been. At Terra Nova, we have like, I guess like we have people that's been coming over the years. Westmore, for sure. I could say within the past 2 years, we've partnered with Pacifica Elementary that uses the theaters for their graduations. So that's been the past 2 years. And then we also have like outside dance companies as well.
How frequently are the theaters, like on a monthly basis, how often are they used?
I'd say it's mostly like the summertime. So I don't think there's like a consistent monthly. Out of the year, I'd say definitely, I'd say like average maybe 6 to 8 times out of the year.
Okay.
And before, like we weren't really using Westmore Theater at all.
Okay.
For outside. Yeah.
Great. I'm glad to hear that it's getting good usage now.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
So currently it says the district generates 300,000 a year. Is that what we're making right now without including this new fees?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And those fees are designed to offset our costs,
Okay.
which, is the goal of raising these rates so that we are able to cover our full costs because our salaries for our custodians and the costs of repairs to facilities are all going up.
Got it. Maybe you have it in here and I just haven't gotten to it. Do we know what the delta will be for next year? Like, do we stand to make?
Yeah.
500K more?
No, not that much. No, I would have to do, we did not go up by percentage. We went up different amounts for different spaces. So I, just off the top of my head, I would say we might get a 10% increase each year.
Okay. It's very good.
Our board policy and ed code really prohibit schools from using their facilities to generate significant amounts of revenue. We really have to be able to offer our facilities kind of at cost.
Got it. That's it.
Well, I think that shows we're good community partners. It's great.
My only question is, for the current users of our facilities, are they aware that these increases are coming? Did you guys give them a heads up, that kind of thing?
Not yet, but we do have a plan to send out like a blast email to our current renters, as well as updating our facilities page with like our memo.
And the implementation is not until January 1st. So they have time to adjust their budgets.
To figure it out. Okay, cool.
I did notice, actually, I looked at some of our neighboring districts and I did see what a huge gap actually that we have between us and them. So this stepped process makes a lot of sense.
All right. Any other questions?
No?
All right. Motion to adopt the facilities and theater rental rates as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Item 17, are there any considerations of future agenda items? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Science.